the West Bend School District and School Board Curriculum Committee. It is 4:30 p.m. on August 20th of 2024, and we will start with introductions. My name is Melanie Ergott. I'm a school board member.
June Kruger, school board member.
Kelly Lang, school board member.
Quinn Trueblood, director of curriculum and instruction.
Erin Faust, curriculum and instruction program administrator.
Heather Isaacson, Curriculum and Instruction Program Administrator.
Kelly Downs, Curriculum Coordinator.
All right, thank you. All right, so our first item will be a presentation, and this will be the kindergarten math screener, which was prepared by Tina Van Root and Kelly Downs. So I believe they will be presenting.
Hello. All right, so back in June when we presented to Curriculum Committee about our universal screening results from this school year, we previewed that for universal screening, we have some changes coming up for 2024. As pictured in this table, we have been able to fill our plan for literacy. We will be using a combination of our current screener, STAR, in partnership with our new screener, AimsWeb Plus, which was selected by DPI to fulfill the Act 20 requirements. So our literacy picture for screening is complete. For math, we have been using STAR Math for grades 1 through 8 ever since we adopted STAR, and we have had a hole in our kindergarten math screening. To fill that hole for this year, we have selected the Universal Screener for Number Sense, or USNS. We are choosing to do this as a pilot for this year, given the significant amount of changes that are happening for screening. It checks a lot of great boxes. It is free, so there's no additional cost to the district. The math interventionists, where there is one at each elementary school, will be administering it. So there is no additional workload to the classroom teachers to give this screener. It's going to follow the same screening windows that we have set for the other assessments. It comes with norms and benchmarks and proficiency levels for fall, winter, and spring, which aligns to all of our other windows. Our district uses EduClimber, which is a teacher data tool that sucks up a lot of scores and information, and the teachers have used it for 6 years. The scores from this assessment can be entered directly into that system, which the math interventionists already know how to do, so there's no additional training needed. And probably most importantly, the USNS aligns very closely to AVMR, which is the primary intervention that the students receive if it's decided that they need additional help above and beyond the classroom to work on their math skills. Aside from screening, you can see there's an asterisk at the bottom. This USNS can also be used as a diagnostic assessment for math in grades 1 through 8. So it's going to be able to serve a purpose for a select amount of students as needed in the upper elementary through middle school grades as well. This is just a sample of the different categories that the students are going to be assessed on, and it highlights, again, that through kindergarten, fall, winter, and spring, the different areas that are assessed.
This is really critical, foundational skills for our students. And the USNS is going to allow us to really target exactly what kids need for their intervention. Up to this point, we haven't had a very robust assessment or a diagnostic. This will allow us to not only assess it, but for our kindergartners, then go straight to AVMR and do even a deeper dive with it and to do that intervention with it. So it's a really great tool. Our interventionists are super excited about using it. More importantly, this is going to allow us to get our kindergartners into intervention. Right now, they're not served at all because we don't have a screener, they're not part of the process. Now that we do, we will begin pulling interventions for them in January. We will give the assessment in the fall to determine where they're falling and to give input to teachers, but that's way too young to be starting interventions. So we'll use that as a baseline data so that when we come back in January, we'll redo this and then pick up students as necessary.
With the universal screening picture complete, I do want to preview that for the following school year, 25-26, we might see more universal screening changes again. Given our current map for this year, you can see we're using 3 different assessment systems between 4K through grade 8. With the addition of the assessment system labeled with number 1, Ames Web Plus, through the Act 20 literacy, when we start giving that this year in winter, we're going to spend winter and spring assessing what else that program can do. Our team, in partnership with feedback from the different K-8 schools, are going to use the springtime to really evaluate what systems do we need, are there any that we can condense, and what would be the right set of assessment tools to take us into 25-26. So next summer, around this time, you'll probably be hearing from us again about what our future 25-26 assessment system plan will be. Any questions?
All right, I don't know. I think it looks good. It sounds like it's a good fit, and I like that it's free. And
No extra training.
yeah, no,
extra,
it sounds like it's kind of a no-brainer, right?
yeah. We're pretty excited. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you. Okay, so the next item on our discussion is modern literature books. Who will be presenting that?
Yes, I will
Yes,
be.
okay, Quinn will be presenting that. Dr.
Thank you. There is, as the committee knows, has been working so diligently on what do we need to do to prepare our staff and our parents with what we've learned, the things that we've adjusted. So I wanted to just draw your attention to this cover letter, which would be really what every single list would have. And notably, the permission options are very clear for families here. And that was just critical because we want parents to always have the list, but we also wanted to, at the junior level and high school level, give them an option to say, I give full permission, or I'd like to release permission for every single title on lists. So this does reflect the understanding that the committee has about how families will be notified and the format for which it will be released to families via Skyward electronically, because we found that that was really the highest chance of parents receiving the list and communicating with the teachers. So hopefully you'll see in this draft that it does reflect as clearly as possible what we are, how we're serving our students and our families. Okay, any questions on the actual permission option for families? One thing I did want to note also is that there is a link here to unique lists for parents. So if they give permission, they will click on this permission form, and each of the titles will be identified on this form. And that's really a way for us also to keep an accounting of just accuracy around the activity around these books. Any questions you have about the system for permission options for families? Okay, then we'll go right into the list itself. This is modern literature. The structure of this course, it had been previously called contemporary literature, now modern literature, and the structure is using some whole group class novels, but mostly it's going to be in this literature discussion group, which we have been calling book club. This is an 11th grade course, so that is the students we're serving, and it's a mystery suspense. It's a very short list of books because this class will have a series of different themes within, so you'll see more lists come through for this particular class. So we can just, I'd like to just maybe just set the table a little bit because this looks slightly different but reflects the committee's discussion and the board's discussion on how information is the notation for it. For instance, for the inheritance games, you'll see that all the elements previously are still carried over. The title, the author, the summary, the learning focus, and then we have the criteria. I wanted to just focus on obscene language. You'll see here it says limited, and there are 2 words spelled out here. I know that there had been discussion, and the committee here had said that it would be reasonable not to list those words just because we've gone through enough of it to know that, that's maybe excessive or it's maybe unnecessary. But we left it here because we wanted you to see how limited it really was. If it had been in the old notation, it would have been an X with those names on it, or with those words. So I think that is a slight change that I think is a nuance that we'd like the committee to come back and say, should we for this particular book list, put those words down or not? So I'll stop there first.
I envisioned that the word limited would be shown and the words would not be listed. That's how I envisioned it. I don't really see value in adding the words there because I think we're trying to get away from exposing the kids to those words if the parent so chose to not allow that book.
I was going to say, I don't find it necessary to list them either. I think limited, some, but when we're talking about this specific list, we're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old adults. Like these, I think that is unnecessary to list.
I think there's a lot of transparency already. If the parents wanted to dig into that further, they could probably find it online somewhere, right? So I'm okay with not specifically spelling them out.
And thank you for clarifying that. We will take that and note that for future lists, and it may come up for discussion in future times, but for now, we will not list the actual words. I also, Ms. Lang, you had mentioned that this is a 16, 17-year-old band of students. You'll notice throughout the entire list here of all the titles, you'll see that there's ages that are noted in the wider world of Amazon book looks and common sense that it's 12 plus, 13 plus, 9 plus, 14 plus. It is not 16, 17 plus. And we know for certain, and I'll come back to this point because it's a real effect, we cannot find books really that are age appropriate in this genre that really does not pass some of these filters. So we have to consider that in our choices. And what happens inadvertently or advertently doesn't matter. The effect is we are lowering the rigor for the 16, 17-year-old in the actual literature. There's no way around it. But this is where we're landing. So I just wanted to note that. I'll go to the second book. You'll see that there's a notation for graphic violence. This was one of the criteria that the board worked through entirely and accepted the recommendations. So you'll see that this is truly in true form of the graphic violence. I wanted to draw your attention that it says limited here, but if we were to really look at the high school ban for the level of appropriateness for this type of content, it's lower. It would have been some, because it was none, limited, and some. So I would propose, I just wanted to be transparent, I would propose that this would have been an NA. So I wanted you to see how our team was working through that. Do you see that? So it's a real demonstration. So just so you can see how it works. If it would have been some, it still would have been permissible. But this was so little that we wanted to actually put NA. So it's just an example. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. I won't go through any more examples because I think I did walk through the two specific examples for notation and how we want to record them and show them for parents.
I'm thinking it might be a little confusing for the NA when there is some, even though it is lower than our bar, it might be valuable to note that there's limited.
So could we talk about that? So there's two things going on. There's threshold descriptors, and then there's actual notations to communicate with parents. So I think to sort that out, it might be really reasonable to say, at this grade band, we'd have none. At this grade band, we'd have limited. At this grade band, we'd have some. It wouldn't appear on this list if it was past that threshold. So we might have to use the word limited to communicate with parents. because it would have, even if it were some, it would still pass through. But this would be a different descriptor just for parents. Is that? Now, if we play that forward, though, the NAs we can't quite use as, clearing the deck. So let's talk about that in a little bit. So can we get other thoughts about using the descriptors limited, some, or none just for parents?
Well, I think we go back to what is the definition of limited and some? And so does this save us from having to define everyone's different explanations of those words?
It's very hard to do. It's very hard to do. Because what that means in our threshold and band description is that we would have none. Obviously, none means none in the elementary levels. In the middle levels, 6 through 8, we would have limited. So that would be age appropriate. And then high school would be some, because you'd have to have more. And recall, even with the language earlier on, when you had 4 different descriptors, I'm going to language now, there was none, infrequent, sporadic, and up for discussion. So even then, I think it's very hard. We're just trying to be more general, if you will, and consider the age appropriateness of it. So I don't know how to bend to make it more descriptive. What we have to do is, I think, my recommendation is to say there's a guarantee that if it was more than some at the high school level, it would not make this list.
I think that just if you just wrote limited, do we need to describe all of it out? You know, just if there's just kind of a little letting the parents know, like, hey, there's some limited violence, and they could look into it if it was something that they wanted to censor their child from, right? That would maybe be a little bit less work for everybody typing all of that out. And
I think in prior discussions, we were talking about, children could be triggered on certain things. So parents are going to try to direct them or guide them away, or maybe that's an off-limit book. But by listing it here, are we in that area of they're reading it already and it could be triggering? I'm not sure if we're addressing the need of bringing up the things in the book that are questionable, and then just putting it on the permission slip. It seems a little counterintuitive.
so maybe just kind of like what we did with the obscene language, if we just have limited, some, but not spelling out the words, could we do that for
Even for graphic violence.
too, and just kind of keep it.
Because even the description, if you look at it, these are literally descriptions of articles, in old media in the book. So you can imagine what that looks like. But this itself, articles and descriptions of murders in the country and people dying, they're really records in a community. So our team said, we just wanted to be real transparent, that we would also say that this wouldn't have constituted a notation in this description, because it's
Because it's not
none of it is
exceeding
that too hair raising, none of it is too obscene, or none of it is too scary, if you will. So I'm clear on that we would just use the word limited to describe the graphic violence for that particular book and for all other books. With that notation. Okay. Anything else that you would like to address?
I just want to add that I think, this is older students. This is an elective class, correct? And I think we're very transparent by letting people know what books that will be available to be read. And, I feel comfortable with this, that we don't need to remove anything or whatever. Parents can make the choice themselves if they want their child to read it or not read something.
Okay, thank you. We have our notes, and we'll carry them forward for this class and all other classes until there's updates on the discussion or the board's comments.
Sure.
Thank you. Yeah, she's here.
Okay. The next item on our discussion would be the recommendations for book club selection and notification regarding sexual content. And Jen Wimmer is here as the liaison to the policy committee, and she will be presenting this.
Thank you.
It's a little easier to have it in front of you to go through. So I'm here as a liaison from the policy committee. We went through, and I've included, if you're following along at home and looking at board docs, we had a really long laundry list of passages, 70 plus some passages. I re-uploaded that with some numbers just in case you wanted to reference things that caught your eye when you were looking at that comprehensive list. And then I went back and revisited our conversation in policy to help isolate for us some of those pieces that we were looking at, because some are really easy to get through and some aren't, but we kind of went off your conversation. So that very first, if people want to follow along at home, we'll start with the piece that says for curriculum in it. So it's attached right in board docs, and it has for curriculum and instruction as its header. So that first piece was reorienting you to what our current policy language says. There's just a one-liner. We talked about expanding that one-liner to include a little bit more context. And then below is then what are separate from policy, the procedures you're going to use to go through and talk about and do the work that you were just kind of doing around books. It's going to help the curriculum committee before they come to the table, and then it's going to help you sort through those pieces as well. So in that, it's looking at how do you interpret that policy. So we gave you a little bit more visual and context around some of the language you were struggling with the last committee meeting, fleshing out what those things really mean. So let's take a little bit and go through those. You have two pieces of the puzzle, right? In looking at it's literally written text, or are there photos or visuals inside the book? Because you can have things like graphic novels, you can have other literature of that kind. So it's two different kinds, and they each carry with it. So if you can take a moment and look at that, are there any pieces that don't lend themselves to clarity, that don't lend themselves to those pieces of understanding for your team? Majority of the context is taken right from statute language and what the legal definitions of these pieces would be. Some we've put in kind of accessible common language. You know, I can't believe not everyone knows the prurient nature of out of the statute, but just unpacking those. So any questions on kind of what would be present in text? I think the photos and the visuals was pretty clear on that. And then sometimes you're looking at a further analysis, really looking at, because in the top part, it's like, okay, these things are here or they're not, right? And then there's an intersection where you really have to talk about and kind of untangle a little bit. So we'll go through some of those. But then we talked about, okay, is it reflecting or producing sexual desire? Is it there to titillate? Is it there to, you know, what is its purpose? Now, before we even get to this, our staff are vetting books to have value, to bring forward to you. They're looking at that. They're doing that work. They're doing that lift. But it's just mindful of the checks and balances. And then we always talked about going through and looking at different age levels. So for the purpose of the conversation tonight, as we unpack some of these, I want you to keep your highest levels in mind, your 11th and 12th graders, right? We'll get to, is there a certain time other things are or aren't appropriate, or where we draw that line? But it's just thinking like at the most extreme, our young adults, what would be allowable when we talk about sexual content? Does that sound good, everyone? Grounded kind of in that front part. Okay. What I did was pull from the 70 plus passages from that, a couple key ones for us to focus on in the different areas. So in that first one, it's passages that talk about sexual excitement, right? And that's defined for you. And we really talked about things in the first example, like, okay, that's saying that's going those don't really seem allowable when we were looking at that through the policy lens. But we did get to that third one and talk about there should be further context analysis. So was there any disagreement around kind of that first or second one and that content going, yep, that should be in, that should be allowable? Because we're pretty clear on that piece that those would not be allowable. Okay. Like I said, once you really have the conversation, everyone's a lot closer and they're thinking than people think. So looking at the third one, this had a lot of discussion around it, especially around the intersection with behavior, because the passage number 3 is specifically around a dick pic. That's what it's talking about. That is something that adolescents may or may not experience. And it was giving the context, because we talked about when you analyze for context that we're not glorifying, having, sex, doing drugs, all that kind of stuff, that it's not doing that there's has some kind of fundamental purpose and context. So we were talking about, okay, that third one might be a time where you look a little further. Here's a 1-2 sentence statement on there, and it's leading you to believe like, oh, they're actually like, they're not receptive to receiving one, and then it doesn't give us the context of what happens after either. So we were talking about then too weighing like, okay, if this is something that's not allowable in schools, and for anyone watching, this is punishable by law, friends. You're going to get citations. You're going to be having conversations with the police on this. So if that's not allowed as behavior in school, should it be allowed in the books that we read? So that was really where we started talking about that piece. And we said, and this is where we took the easy way out, we can help with the words, but then we were talking, okay, this is where we'd have to kick back to a curriculum committee where they're analyzing the further context of something. Because we certainly have like, you know what, nothing that's not allowed shouldn't be in there. We certainly have that opinion held. But then we also look at, but what's the context? And is it, there's another paragraph and that's stupid and a poor choice and, has these ramifications kind of thing? Or is it then all of a sudden, and again, this is the only reference in this book. And it's really hard on purpose to do this because we didn't give you the name, I didn't give you an age, I didn't give you anything. These aren't books that are necessarily used in our schools. I'm giving you a snippet so you can isolate a decision-making factor. So really weigh in on kind of where we would sit as a curriculum committee on something like that being present in a book.
So the idea that something is not, like it is a crime or a felony or whatever.
Right.
We do have books with murders in them. So I don't necessarily have a lot of way into that argument, but this is very, so I guess my take is this is likely something that could happen in real day life. I think it's valuable for high schoolers to think about how they might react if something like this happened. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility that this could happen to someone.
Yes, they certainly could receive that at those ages with, when you have cell phones and things like that, that is a potential.
And this is where I would lean on the expertise of the teachers. What else of value goes into this book? Because clearly this is just a little bit of a screenshot. Is there value? Is there learning opportunities outside of this few sentences? Then I don't have a problem with this if in the greater good of the book there's more.
So if you want to think about setting up a process, right? Because anyone who sits on your committee is different. Anyone who works in that department is going to be different. So when you think about, okay, yep, we all validate that there should probably be further analysis. So in that further analysis, then what's the test? and how do they know what to bring forward? So I'm thinking if I'm a teacher and you know what, there's this one part in here, and because it says the word dick, it's categorized over here, but is it really this? Is it that? But then also if I'm the teacher, I'm saying, you know what, this is one passage. It is not glorified in any manner. It's this, it's that, and advocate. Who gets to say yes, and how do they know where that line is? I know, I'm here to not pose easy questions.
I feel like if there's a question about it, like should we or shouldn't we, it's probably better to err on the side of caution and maybe see if there's a different selection. That's my opinion on it.
In the example you gave where it's maybe one word, one sentence, I would be fine leaving it in my opinion, because of the entirety of the book taken as a whole and other lessons that could be in the book. And then we're also offering the permission slip, and we have safeguards in place. So I would steer or lean to the side of allowing it based on the teacher's professional opinion on having it be a story that has helped students in the past.
Or what would the permission slip look like if there was something that required, you know, the further context analysis under the sexual content? Then when are we going to be, you know, what do we put in that space to maybe let parents know, like, hey, there was this little bit of something, but.
Well, I thought your conversation before is kind of what are you putting out there and what's accessible to your students when you want parents to make a choice and not see that, but maybe what's behind the curtain for a parent request to learn more or to have access to that so that they're not having to dig through that. But again, you're having those conversations. You can also put in your checks and balances, much like you did with that one set of books where you're like, we don't know, we can't wait, there's too many questions, and move that discussion as part of process. When things fall outside of these bounds and you need this, then it goes to the board on that. You can put in that as checks and balances too, because for me, you got to write some language that they can easily test. I think they can easily look at and go, yep, these are yes or no, these are questionable, weigh them with you as a section of the board and go, what do you think? And then how to vet that going forward. What more would we need to know? Did you do your due diligence on, you know, finding other options? Did you do that? And then move that forward. You can put that in the process. And we talked about that at policy too, as being a piece of where there's certainly a lift with the curriculum committee. The biggest lift is with the teachers and the selection and the kind of the ownership of teaching and learning and vetting those things. And then the presentation to this group. But again, then you can put in there, so then when would we expect to see it as a full board in that? And again, leaning towards that, when something's of question, you're wanting it to be questioned comprehensively.
For me, this snippet is no different than what we're seeing on the other ones. Like, to me, I would put limited, and if there's concern about this, I mean, number 2 and 3 are very vastly different. To me, number 3 is limited, and it's up to the parent's decision. And we go back to all of our other samples and examples that we've put out there, especially thinking of who this is geared towards.
Any other thoughts on those pieces? Like I said, you can look at some of them and go, yep, that's an easy, you know. They're going to get progressively harder to look and figure out. There's not a clear answer. All right, looking at the next, numbers 4 and 5, sexually explicit conduct, right? That is where you're really in detail describing sex. These were no's for us, and very clear no's on that. So we were, you know, and it was very easy for us as readers to, that's pretty clear. We did have one question that we wanted to pose to the committee is, what if this is not a narrative of a sexual encounter or all of that? What if it's a retelling of some kind of dramatic event as part of a story or a narrative? What if it's a victim saying, like, this happened, and there's some pieces of specificity in it? Does that change in any way? And I don't have if I had a real book I was basing that on, I would just bring it, we talk about it. But we were just saying how an author's using something in the narrative, does that shift the view of it?
I guess how descriptive is it, you know? I think.
Let's say
If
number
it's this-
5.
If it's this descriptive,
So we got tripped up on number 5 and just said, what if someone was repeating that to a police officer, that this is what was said? And they're making that statement to the police as a victim.
Very different. Very different in my eyes. I would agree.
yeah.
Again, not easy, right, to do. So you're seeing value in context and having that, and where that would lie and where those questions should be. Then the questioning would sit again with both you and the board when you get to that level of kind of questioning those pieces. Okay. Moving on to 6 and 7, this is when you get into abuse. And it's sexual in nature, or there's arousal or gratification of some kind. So again, in number 6, we were saying, okay, how would we kick this back to a committee to understand the context for that? This is, you have a retelling in number 6, where someone's saying something happened.
For number 6, I don't see anything necessarily inappropriate there. Private parts is listed, but that's not explicit. I would say this one would, like, in my opinion, I would say this would be okay.
Yeah, I don't see anything explicit in that one, but obviously it's implying, something, and I guess it would just depend on the context of the book, too.
Yeah, what else is contained, those pieces, but let's say just this is a retelling of a victim in one circumstance. To your point, where you look at the one just prior, where we're kind of posing that philosophical question, a little bit more detailed.
Yeah.
Again, this is kind of some language referring to privates, but not getting into specifics, not more graphic. So now you're honing in on where's the level of, kind of description in there, okay? Number 7, we had a lot of discussion about number 7 as well. It looks to be, again, a historical context where people are mistreated. And we were just talking about, there's vague language, right? Treating us like animals, cries and screams, that you do and don't have descriptive language. But then we really talked about, every evening the sailors prepared greedily for their night of pleasure and that they're being used. We understand what that means. It's not very specific. You're not talking about those things, but we know what's occurring there.
Yeah.
Where would we fall on that?
Again, without the graphic description and the context of where I'm assuming this is coming from, I would personally be fine with this particular book, because this happens to people. And as we've talked about with all of our other books and all of our other discussions, sometimes people need to have that commonality when they're reading a book.
So again, this is maybe horrific, but not descriptive in that. You know what's occurring, but it's not getting into descriptive. It's garnering the emotion. It's garnering, like I said, that it's a horrific incident, but it's not going into graphic detail around the gratification around those pieces.
Yeah, I was just going to say, with it not being super graphic, I mean, it still would be like sexual content, right? But then maybe that would just be noted on the form as like limited or some or whatever.
Just being fully transparent that this has an incident of sexual violence. It is not given in graphic detail. However, you should know that that's in the book.
Right.
that
Yeah,
you're
I
about
think
to
as long
pick
as
up
we're
For many
transparent.
reasons.
For something like this that is not super descriptive or graphic. But like some of the earlier ones, I would think we would not include it all, right?
Right,
Like-
there's, the really graphic ones.
Yeah, we
like,
would just
everyone
not
was a
even
no.
offer that.
Yeah, everyone was a no, that's not even
Yeah.
coming to you to review. That's pretty easy for us to go, yep, that's not in there. Any other thoughts around kind of where we put that line? Okay. So then there was a set, again, they're not explicit, but it's a detailed description, right? That has to do with sexual excitement or conduct or abuse. So it's not giving you those things. It's not giving you the graphic language.
To 16 and 17-year-olds, this is a limited parents decide for me.
I would agree with that opinion.
So we were just, in numbers 8 through 11, those made sense to the policy committee as well. They weren't graphic, they weren't those. The one that talks about getting a hard-on is actually the physical function of in someone who's paralyzed. It's talking about those pieces, so we're talking about that. And then where we started struggling was one that had just a little bit more to it was the number 12, where it referenced, having a hand on a breast, that kind of piece. So that's where we said, okay, so how would a committee like this then further analyze that text or its context, if you will?
I feel like I would skip that one.
And you don't have the answer to the question either right now. You don't have any of the context around it. And that's what we were saying, like, that was really hard for us to answer because maybe this is this big and it's about this, or maybe this is all of a sudden central to the story around something. And so for us, that's what we started honing into was, what was the central theme to this story? Was it glorified in some way? How prevalent were these pieces in the story? Is it filled with? Is this a snippet? Those kinds of things to help with the analysis, because that's what we were kind of lining up for analysis. So you're very much in sync with where we were landing. The next one, it's in turquoise. This is where it didn't contain explicit or details, but it was clearly a sexual situation that the character was in. And it was in that moment, kind of in a sexual situation.
I feel like it's implied enough that personally I would say no.
I keep going back to, if these are juniors or seniors in high school, I would rather have them reading hard and uncomfortable things to read than things that are meant for 4th and 5th graders. If this makes a difference, that this would get a book out and we have to start offering books that are aimed at a middle school or even a 9th grade level for these kids that are in higher level English classes that are all, they're not required classes. I just put it back to the teachers, and I'm going to continue to say this until everyone is so sick of hearing it, but I go back to the teachers and the parents of that they should be reading age-appropriate materials, if this is part of it.
So I want to just clarify one thing you said, where you talked about if this, then this, and saying that we would have to water down the reading level. Sexual content doesn't make the reading level go higher. There's all these other factors. So I don't want people to think that we're somehow in the ones that you pick. They're still picking texts that are upper end of reading levels. They're still picking some that are in middle because we're serving a wide range, but that shouldn't box out or shift or lower a bar. No one's intention is to lower a bar instructionally, if you will, on that. So I just want to make sure that's clear for our teachers as well as our community, that we're not lowering a bar on.
But if we continue to get rid of books and say, oh, I don't want this in the list, then what book, we're limiting then. So I just.
I'm limiting by content, not, yeah.
Correct.
I just think there's millions of books out there. We should be able to find something without teens having sex with each other in the book.
So we struggled with that at policy, how these in a very clear sexual situation that we would be reading those things in that. So we struggled that we would bring those forward in reviewing them. And again, I think it goes back to you don't get the luxury, it's a hard test on purpose, you don't get the luxury of knowing, is this big in the book? Is it this? Is it that? You don't get that. It's this hard on purpose because that's what it comes down to, right? Even when I give you the context of the book, even when I tell you all those things, even when I do that, it's going to come down to how do I feel when I read this piece of it. So this was more kind of a gray area for this group on that. It's okay. Like I said, there's no right or wrong answer. We're just kind of putting that out so that we can understand and help winnow down to where's their shared understanding, then what parts need to be a deeper discussion. Because you can put that in and have the full board review something and say, that's absolutely fine. It's just where's that, so then your committee can function and know here's the boundaries in which we function, and then here's what goes to the board, and the board can do that. And what would we put forward? What would we need to give to a board to help them make a decision on that, right?
So one of the things is going back to the book as a whole. I'm going to continue to say book as a whole. I'm going to say one or two sentences in a book is not necessarily, in my mind, an automatic removal. We do have, and all the safeguards we have in place, I feel like if your kid really doesn't, I don't know how to say it the right way, but if your child isn't really fazed by this, but the book has a bigger, better life lesson context and can learn from it, I don't want to automatically eliminate books that will be valuable.
So what exactly are you looking for, I guess, with this group? Like, I would say it constitutes as sexual content. I guess I just am not sure what you're fishing for here.
I'm fishing for all of you to say what you feel, what you do. And that's all. Because then we take that collection of where everyone's at. Like I said, you're actually, when you get into these pieces, you're closer than you think on that, right? In kind of getting it narrowed into something that people can execute from. Then you work with the team on the teaching and learning side to understand, is there something that falls out of that, but we should really be advocating for this book because X, Y, and Z? Then we would. Then we create a pathway for advocacy for that. And that's probably at the full board level is where people are landing. Great. If you have that, we're not just saying, okay, but then what would we have to put together as a proposal for a board to review, right? You're all helping going, yeah, but what about this and what about that? That's helping us to narrow then, okay, what would we have to put together in front of a board for a full board review so that they could make a decision on that? Were there any other passages? Again, I gave you a huge laundry list. I plucked some that were going to be easy, yes, and some really difficult ones for the purpose of your conversation. Were there any from the other larger discussion, things you wanted to visit out of the 70-some list that we had? Were there any that caught your eye that you wanted to discuss or talk about how you would vet? Like I said, I just tried to pull a sample where we really dug in on conversation and question that we would have.
At this point, we're really just trying to define the sexual content, right? And we have not hit thresholds or any of that yet, so. Yeah.
And then were there any questions, like I said, on that front page where you have difficulty understanding any of those things or interpreting them? Do we need to go back to any of that description so that that's clear?
I think the definition is laid out nicely, and it's definitely in two boxes, the text analysis and the visual analysis, so I really appreciate that. In the proposed language for our sexual content, I was reading through it, and I feel like, and this I just am looking for clarification on. So halfway through, it indicates an actual or simulated sexual act or sexual conduct, and then a comma, and then actual or simulated sexual act. So I don't know if that, how do we get to, what's the difference between, why is it listed twice? And maybe there's a reason.
Yeah,
I'm
we'll go
just
back to,
curious
yep, and
for
then we
clarification.
can unpack those a little bit more. I'll make notes there, revisit the statute, and look at that and see if we've got any recommends to clean up. Like you said, making it a little bit tighter language and what does that really mean, so it lends itself there. Any other pieces? Thank you. We appreciate your conversation. So what we'll do then is kind of put all these thoughts together and work, where do we still have some holes and things? Where do we still have questions? That kind of piece. And then get the next steps of process. So then which pieces are vetted at a department level, which ones come to the curriculum committee level, and then what's your avenue for a full board review so that you have a little bit more process around that.
Question. So the last time we talked about it, we talked about the definition. One of the concerns was what we had prior, the last curriculum meeting, was that it wasn't clear for the department to pull these books forwards or benchmark against it. The way this is laid out now, is it more clear? And are there other, concerns that aren't called out already?
What we'd have to do now that we're coming back in session, I would actually take this to those high school level teachers so we can look at it through that lens. So that they can weigh in on understanding, weigh in where would you advocate for something, why, what are those pieces, so that they can be part of framing that. Because also too, we're taking snippets of books as those, way more familiar, they might have certain books right in their mind, and here's the why, and here's this. And I think maybe then running through, just as we've tested snippets in language, maybe we do a couple book tests. Because they're gonna know, oh, here's one, and give us one that's what's easiest, I think, is show me a no. show me that this is so easy, you know, and then show me like, oh, and what do I question about this? And they would have the expertise in that. So those will be our next steps to kind of flesh that out when we're back in session with our staff to talk about and gather their thoughts that they could use this. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, our next item up for discussion is the primary resource update to second step, and that will be presented by Ms. Emily Melstrand.
Okay, I think I got it. All right, thank you for the opportunity to do our annual update regarding our primary resource for our social emotional learning curriculum. I just wanted to do a quick reminder just for our school board, for new members, and then also for our community. We have a social emotional learning curriculum that was board approved in 2021. There was board approval for a 4K through 6 curriculum and then a 7th and 8th grade curriculum. And the primary resource that was selected to support that curriculum is the digital platform of Second Step. In addition to that, at the time of approval, we created a district communication plan, and that district communication plan continues to be implemented with fidelity today. That provides a structure to our teachers and administrators around how and when they communicate to families. So the lessons are always previewed for families in a site newsletter, and there's an opportunity for families to opt out if they choose not to have their child participate in that learning. In addition to that, the district communication plan provides at-home connection activities so that parents can grab that information and extend the learning if they choose to do that at home. One of the things that was very important during this process was that we made the commitment to share back with this board and our community anytime there were any updates made to that digital platform. The primary resource is already approved, but we want to make sure that you're aware as they tweak that, because it's digital, right? It's not like a textbook where, a textbook is going to remain static until we get a new textbook. But when it's a digital platform, there's the opportunity for the publisher to make some changes. And so annually since that approval, we've been coming before you to tell you what those updates are. And I am actually going to jump over to the document that describes the platform changes. They were pretty minimal this year, but still important for us to share those out with you. So one of the primary changes, the platform was updated so that the administrator, and that would be like your building principal or your student services team, can more easily view the data related to usage. So basically that kind of behind the scenes dashboard that tells, oh, the teacher's logging in, this is how much time that they're on the platform, is just easier to use than it was before. And then there were 2 lessons in the elementary content that were slightly modified for the current year, and those are described in the table below. The first one is really the introduction of 2 new videos that replace static photos. And there are descriptors of what each of those short videos include under the description column. And I'll let you just take a look at those. I won't read those to you. And then the second change was basically a switch from there was a static image of a roller coaster, and it is now I don't even know how you say it, the roller coaster moves. So you see the movement. But I think it's important that I'm including that in here because that's the level of description that Second Step is giving to us in terms of this changed. And now the roller coaster is moving. And then there was a more substantial change at the middle school level. I want to acknowledge it, but I want to let you know that it doesn't impact our instruction. One of the things that occurred within the update is that the Second Step publisher created a new unit. The unit is called Developing a Positive Sense of Self. And that unit, so they're, numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. Unit number two was previously the bullying and harassment unit, which aligns with our social emotional curriculum. They've moved bullying and harassment to a supplemental status, which means that we have to turn it on for teachers to access. And they put in developing a positive sense of self as unit 2. We are not teaching unit 2 because it doesn't align with the curriculum that our board approved in 2021. So that communication has already gone out to teachers and our administrators. They know exactly how to kind of move through that platform, not utilizing that particular unit because it's unnecessary in our current curriculum. We will continue to use the bullying and harassment unit. We just had to basically highlight where that could be accessed. And then just a couple of other considerations. I want you to know that all of those platform updates, the ones that impact our instruction, are really very, very minimal. It really is the introduction of the 2 videos. It is reflected in the social emotional learning curriculum document. So we update that in alignment with any changes or updates. And all of the things that we have agreed to upon approval continue to be in place. And I already mentioned the communication plan. I talked about the fact that families continue to have the ability to opt students out, and that opt-out option is communicated both during the introduction of the instructional period. So at the beginning of the year, the principal will send out an introductory letter to parents, and then that also goes out to parents in newsletters. And that's it. Any questions, comments?
I just want to say thanks for your presentation. Obviously, the changes are pretty benign, so it's not anything that is concerning to me.
Thank you. I think it's important that we continue to bring that forward and that we don't lose track of the importance of that. All right.
That's good. Thank you so much.
I think I'm up again.
Are you up again?
I better have you check.
It looks like you are. Okay, so the next item is our primary resource selection for life skills for employability course number 956 in special education.
All right. So again, thank you for the opportunity to share some of the work that we are doing to ensure that our students with disabilities receive a rigorous and well laid out curriculum. I have been working with my team over the course of the past several months, and the curriculum and instruction team has been very supportive in this as we are working towards having our entire curriculum better articulated. We're really thinking about some of those courses that, although they are not available to our general population, they're really specific to students' IEPs, but we're really thinking about that same process in terms of how are we really looking at the curriculum laid out for those courses and ensuring that we have primary resources that adequately support our instruction. So the first thing that I wanted to do, and this is really just kind of an opportunity for me to give you some information about a suite of courses that are offered at our high school. And these are courses, again, and I'll talk about this in a minute, that are really designed for students with very specific disability-related needs that are identified in their individual education plan. But you can see here that we have 3 courses in this suite, and all of these courses are really working to help our students be ready to be employable, to get them set for what comes after high school. And what you will see here is the course that we're going to talk about, Life Skills for Employability, is offered to students grades 9 through 12. It's classroom-based learning, and I'll talk to you about what we're targeting in that course in just a minute. But after kids participate in that particular course, they have the opportunity to move into highly supported work experiences on the job site. So they'll take this classroom-based course. They're going to learn some of those early employability skills. And then when they've completed that in 9th, 10th, or 11th grade, they have the opportunity to go into our works program. And our Works program is kind of starting that career exploration, and it's focused on learning skills on job sites. And that particular course is very highly supported. And then as kids move into 11th and 12th grade, we're backing off on some of the support. So it's kind of that gradual release of supports and helping kids become more independent while they're on the job. So that's kind of the suite. We're going to focus on life skills for employability. Maybe if I can get this to go. There we go. Okay. So I wanted to make sure that I was really clear about this. So life skills for employability is not a course that is available to our general student population. This is a course that is taught by a special education teacher. Students are assigned to this course only through their individualized education plan meeting or plan development. When we decide a student would benefit from this course, it's really based upon their individual disability-related needs. A lot of the students who participate in this course are working on communication. They're working on social skills. They're working on emotional regulation. They're working on planning and organizing and executive functioning skills. This is a required type of specialized instruction through a student's IEP as driven by the Individuals with Disability Education Act. So it's an IEP team decision, and it's something that we are expected to do as a district on behalf of kids who have these disability-related needs that require something more or more intensive. And it's important for you to know that parents and guardians are always participants. They are always offered the opportunity to participate, and I will say the majority of our parents are participants in the IEP development. So it's important for me that you know that, because parents are involved in this decision-making to the maximum extent possible. So I know you're familiar with this whole idea of the curriculum development and improvement process. I just wanted to highlight kind of where we're at in this. And after I posted this, I realized I have my dates incorrect under the blue column. So that should say July of 24 through January of 25. But we started with the evaluation phase, and that included a collaborative team of the special education teachers who teach this course, our coordinators and our administrative team in consult with the curriculum and instruction team. And the first thing that we did is we reviewed all of the IEPs of students who are signed up for this course, and then we also looked at students who have taken this course. And we looked at their IEPs and really targeted, okay, what kind of specially designed instruction do these students require? And then we looked at our curriculum map, looking at the different standards addressed in this particular course, and made sure that that met the needs of those kids, right? We want to make sure that the standards we're teaching align with their disability-related needs. And then we reviewed the current program resources that the teachers were using. And one of the things that we recognized is the need for a primary resource. Currently, our teachers are using more supplementary resources, and we know that if there isn't a primary resource identified, that we're going to lack some continuity based upon who's teaching the course. So after we did that, we determined the need for a primary resource. We did a review of multiple options that we could consider and really looked to ensure that, we used a rubric where we were basically looking at, does this particular resource cover all of the required standards based upon that crosswalk between IEPs and the standards that we considered, and narrowed down our selection based upon that rubric. So we also looked at cost, we looked at ease of use, all of those things that were important in selecting a resource. Up and coming, so we've narrowed that down, and that's what I'm bringing to you today, but this is not necessarily an absolute final decision. Obviously, that is a decision that we will bring back to you to make when we're at the point where we have all the information we need. But on the docket for this first semester is we would like to pilot the chosen resource, primary resource. And within the context of that, and this is kind of a little bit different than like when we do this big ELA purchase, right? Because it's such a large purchase that the company will send out resources in advance. You can review the actual resources before you make that purchase. This is a much smaller purchase. So we have our resource review in advance is really based upon models or examples that the publisher sends to us. So that's why I say we're not 100% committed, although we feel like this is a really good resource. Our intention is once we have the actual set of materials, we've reached out to invite the students, guardians who participate in that course to come in and do an initial review of the selected material. We would then pilot the material midway through first semester. We're going to do a survey to check in with those parents. What do you think? How is this working? And then we would be coming back to you with all of that information and asking for a formal approval at that point in time if it's still the recommended resource. This is just high-level information, but what I wanted to be able to illustrate here for you is that we are aligning this work across two sets of standards. We're looking at the career readiness standards, which is depicted in this slide, and then we're also looking at the career and technical education employability standards. You usually hear Tim Harder speak about those when he's talking about CTE, but what I wanted to demonstrate here for you is that we're looking at the same things for all of our students. It doesn't matter what your skill level is. Post-secondary preparation is important for all of our kids. So we're looking at career readiness skills, learning readiness skills, and life readiness skills. Those are kind of the three big buckets. And then you can see these different, more isolated skills or standards within each of those subsets. The career and technical education employability standards are intended to reinforce professional workplace skills in personal work habits and attitudes. And again, there's a set of very specific standards that we're looking at. For the life skills for employability course, we're really targeting two areas in career readiness. We're targeting the learning ready standards, which are the academic skills, the reading, the writing, the communication, the critical thinking skills and problem solving skills. And then we're also addressing the life ready skills, self-awareness, management, responsibility, interpersonal and communication skills. And then across that, we're targeting all of the career and technical education employability standards. So the primary resource that we are recommending for pilot implementation is called True Thought. All of our standards align to this. It's actually, what's the best way to say this? We're not using a digital version of it. We're using a reproducible handout. So basically, it's pretty old school. It comes in binders and kits, and they're reproducible. There's 3 different components that we're looking at, and those are listed here. One of the things that we liked about this is that the developmental range is very broad, meaning that the skills taught can be differentiated down to kind of that 10-year-old range. And I say that carefully, but we are serving some students who might be reading or writing more similar to a student in that age range. And this resource makes it easy to expand both at a lower level and at a higher level, ease of use, minimal cost. The other thing about this, and one of the things I think it's important for you to know, if we don't select this as a primary resource, the resource is not going to go unused. We would actually be using this for very individualized instruction of students where we have groups of kids, 2 or 3, working on a particular skill in this area with a speech and language pathologist or a special education teacher. So the tool will be used regardless. Our primary goal in this is consideration as a primary resource, which is a board decision. So next steps, we would like to start the implementation of a pilot period. With that, we should be receiving the materials soon. We would have stakeholder feedback review from the parents and guardians. We would do that mid-semester feedback loop. We'll review those results at the end of the first semester, and then we'll come back to the curriculum committee for consideration of next steps and whether or not that would be request for approval from the full board, or we'd like to do a second pilot. I know that was a lot, but I don't very often get the opportunity to talk to you about some of the things that we're doing related to courses at the high school that are more designed for students with disabilities, so I a little bit took advantage of that. Feedback or questions?
I thought it's great. I think it's awesome. I love the life skill piece of that too, so I look forward to getting this in place.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it sounds good. I love that we offer things for people with disabilities, especially at those higher grade levels, and because moving on in life at that point can be tricky. I've got my own little special guy at home, so I just love that we have all these opportunities for them. So,
Yeah, thank you. You know, and I didn't mention this as part of the suite, but one of the really cool things that we have that kind of, you know, when I talked about the life skills and then the works program and the career program, often after kids go through that process, they consider our Project Search. And I know you have probably heard about this, but Project Search is a partnership that we do with the Threshold and with Mutual Insurance, where we are able to place several students every year at Mutual Insurance for a true internship. And if you ever want to see something really cool, go to their graduation, because that has had such an impact on so many kids that needed something different, but are absolutely able to contribute in our community. So, thank you. All right. Next up, Tim, CTE.
All right, good evening, everybody. So it is my yearly appearance in front of the curriculum committee to talk about CT updates. So a little different than some of our curricular areas where you have a little bit longer drawn out curricular cycles. Sometimes our career and technical education curriculum changes every year, every 2 years. Some of that's driven by Moraine Park Technical College and the offerings that they have. A lot of it is driven by our business advisors or our advisory groups that come in and support us throughout the year, and our business and industry partners. And so it is that time of the year where I'm presenting some updates. All of the updates except for one would take effect in the 25-26 school year, and then I'll talk about an additional resource that we'd like to bring on board this year. So I am here representing 20-some staff up at the high school, probably 30-some business people, and 100+ students who provided feedback this last year in our advisory process. And so thank you to all those people who are part of that. Probably the most simplistic change that we are looking towards in the year 25-26, and this is feedback from our students, is making it easier and making course names simplified. And so this is a big long chart, but on the left-hand side of each column is or of the two columns is basically the current name and then the proposed name. And what we are trying to do is to standardize the use of 1, 2, and 3 in our leveling up at the high school. We are starting to apply this to other curricular areas outside of CTE, and to make the names more specific or simplistic to what they are. Some of our students have said, I don't need to know 8 different things, or I don't need design and automation and manufacturing. It's automation. That's what I go out into the industry and hear. That's what I see. That's what I do. And so this is something that our technology and engineering team put together. It does not change the curriculum in the course. It does not change the course description. It's just purely the course name that would change and really get us into consistently, as we change other courses in our CT areas, using 1, 2, and 3 as our levels at that point. We currently don't have beyond 3 in any levels. If we were to look at that, we would just use 4 at that point. And so if we do have courses that offer technical college credits, so as you know, we are a huge partner with Moraine Park Technical College. We are somehow, some way, before I retire, going to cross the $500,000 mark is my next goal of technical college credit earned. We were within 50,000 last year, so hopefully maybe this year. This concept of our students taking technical credit here on campus taught by our teachers. So if you're a CTE teacher for us, it's also unique that you have to follow DPI's guidelines to be certified. You also have to follow the same guidelines that the Higher Education Council requires of 2-year and 4-year degrees, or 4-year degree granting institutions at that point. So there are numerous courses within there that would offer those technical credit pieces. I'll stop and answer questions kind of after each one. So are there any questions on the recommended course name changes?
Is this more in line with post-graduation? So just thinking, okay, so when I see on a resume or something, construction 1 versus construction systems, is construction 1 more seen in that industry as like, we know what that means?
Yeah, little more basic.
Okay.
So for like construction systems, one of the pieces of conversation was, well, is that just theory, or do you actually go out and do something? Well, the reality is construction systems, you're actually building a model corner of a house out in the lab and you're actually doing something. Some people may see that as a theory piece. We are also starting to see schools, not just in Southeast Wisconsin, get into some very simplistic naming conventions like this at the same time. All right, then I'll jump into the next one. So our business and information department, so we have 3 full-time teachers that teach that at the high school, and then we have a middle school teacher. Working with our advisory group and working with Moraine Park Technical College have 2 recommended changes. The first one is in our accounting pathway, and just as a reminder maybe to the community watching, I know I use those words a lot here. A pathway is a sequence of courses that our students go through to earn some sort of a certificate, technical college credit, or both. That also then reports out to the state and shows up on our state report card, not into the score portion of it, but it reports into number of students who take college credit bearing courses, and also number of students who are what are called concentrators, meaning in my 4 years of high school, I concentrated in accounting by taking multiple courses, which is 2. Our current course system that we have has been around for years. We have 2 technical college credit courses, and then we have an advanced counting credit course. And the advanced counting course has not run. It's a lower enrollment piece, and the feedback that we get to it is there's no credit being offered to our students. There is no 3rd level that we can offer our students here through Moraine Park currently that would match up that we could teach on our campus here. And so our team got creative a little bit in working with Moraine Park and are actually going to ask for the reduction of a course. So we would have Accounting 1 and Accounting 2, but working with Moraine Park, instead of our students being able to earn 4 credits in each of those classes, we are looking at 11 to 12 credits. And so the 3rd course, if I were to take Accounting 1 and Accounting 2, and we were just waiting for Moraine Park's final blessing on this, our students would also certify in a course around data management, analysis, and reporting. And that's something that our business and industry partners thought was very important for our students to have there. So as we look at not running that advanced course that doesn't have credit bearing, we were actually able to give our students additional college credit opportunities, not just to Moraine Park. Those courses can then be articulated to 4-year universities also. In 2 classes, more college credits at that point in time. And so that is our suggested change for the 25-26 school year around accounting. Any questions on that one?
I have one question about the duration of a class. So a student here is going to be like 1 semester.
Yes.
So any class that they're taking through Moraine Park, is that also a semester? So this could be achieved in 1 school year?
Yes, so we typically have grade requirements or levels. So Moraine Park will push a lot of their technical college credits towards the 10th and 11th and 12th grade, because there is a lot of change between being a freshman and by the time I would enroll as that 5th year out. So a student might be able to take this starting in 10th grade and then the Accounting 2 course in 11th grade. They are semester courses in this case, where then we would embed that 1 course between the 2. If we do offer a year-long course, and we have them where we embed a technical college credit, most universities, most technical colleges don't run on a year-long class. We embed a course in either semester, and so that's how we figure that out. And then we tell the students right up front that if you're in this course and you're an early graduate as a senior, you're thinking to drop 2nd semester, I'm sorry, June, you're not going to get the credit if you don't stay for that duration. So, all right. Similar to the accounting, I did put some new course descriptions in there. There's a couple of tweaked words or changed words from where we are at, but really the same concept, just highlighting again that a kid at minimum will get 8 credits by taking 2 courses before they leave here. Similar to that accounting piece is we have a business marketing and management pathway. And over time, this has changed both at Moraine Park, some of our 4-year institutions where our students go to. We currently offer a year-long class in what's called Entrepreneur Academy, and then we offer a business strategies class. So think of Entrepreneur Academy of I walk in the door and by the time I've done, I've thought up a cool idea and I'm gonna start my business plan and all of that. And then business strategies is the other half where I actually write the plan. And so working with Moraine Park and our business partners, we weren't seeing the carryover for students to get a year in and a semester when it's only available for their junior and senior year, because it is truly a capstone course. So our team spent some time sitting down and aligning topics and units of study. And with that, we actually came to the recommendation that to meet what Moraine Park is offering and to better meet what our kids are seeing here or need here, we actually are going to combine into 1 year-long course that will offer our students 6 technical college credits, 1 in entrepreneurship and 1 in business strategies, where the student will do the entire project in 1 year-long class. So we walk in, we go through the concept of being an entrepreneur. How do I start a business? How do I come up with ideas? How do I do my research? How do I look into risk analysis? How do I look into a business plan, a marketing plan? How do I actually carry that out? And then they actually run a short nonprofit business by the time they're done in the course. So the students would actually get this as a capstone course after they've taken the introductory courses, and they would then get their 6 college credits at that point. So it's condensing down, but giving kids more opportunities was kind of our goal. It also helps open up kids' opportunity for scheduling in their schedules and trying to get into some other courses. It's a lot to fill a year and a semester in a 2-year time frame for elective courses for our kids. All right, the last item I have for you today is actually the only thing we would look to bring for approval this fall that would implement this school year. So our construction pathway, our students take an introductory woodworking course that gives them experiences to go into architecture, construction, some other manufacturing things. It's kind of a potpourri course. Once you get done with that, we have a construction systems course, which will become Construction 1, hopefully. And then we have advanced construction. And so our construction course, that systems course, is a semester-long course where I learn all about the different systems in a house, but then I get to go out and actually build it out into the construction shop up at the high school. So if you walk in at the end of the semester, there is this kind of corner of a house. I've framed it, I've put siding on it, I've roofed it, I've done flashing work, I've put a window in, I've done some basic electrical, some basic plumbing. Then our students go on from there to our advanced course, and that's the course that many people in this community probably see because that's the one where they build the tiny house in partnership with Habitat for Humanity. So with that, one of the things for us to have a high quality pathway in the eyes of the state and the federal government under Carl Perkins, which is kind of the legislation that drives support for career readiness in K-12 schools in CTE, we were looking at ways to increase this pathway with one of the 5 things you can do to put it into a standing that fits into a high standing pathway. One of those is to offer students a certification piece when they leave. And so in Wisconsin, not only do we offer that, and that allows us to qualify that pathway, years ago, the state of Wisconsin came out with Act 59, and it is a CTE incentive program that incentivizes school districts to offer industry standard certifications to students. And that can be across the board from a test on, I know how to work on this portion of a vehicle, I know how to use that manufacturing facility, I can show you this in culinary, I can do this in a business course or an accounting course. In this case, it's certificates around equipment that we may use in construction. It is also safety. It is also concepts. And so they have a approved list that we use. What we are looking at is a recommended 2 resources. So they're a student manual and a teacher book. that our students would have that would not only give resources for the teachers and the students, but also would prepare them for that certification test and give them access to those certifications. The really unique thing about Act 59 is there are even a few slivers of those where students are incentivized. So not in the construction world, but our students who take EMT for us here, if they get certified in EMT, not only does the district have money to put back into offering these certifications, they actually receive a check themselves. And so in this case, we're looking at two new courses, books that our students would have access to, just like other curricular processes that we brought forth to you in the past. In tomorrow's newsletter, it will go out that will have the books available here for review at the ESC if somebody wants to stop in and see them and what they look like. They can certainly contact me, and I'll be glad to set that time and date for them to do that. These are the resources that we are looking at. I've included a link in the presentation if people want to lead into these further and see what's there. It is two books that we would utilize with resources. The first one is safety, so it touches on equipment safety in OSHA and all of those requirements that go with it, and an overview of residential and construction and commercial construction. We want our students to realize that if you go into the world of construction, it's not just building homes. And so we've had some really, really great examples of that in town, like the district downtown and all those apartment complexes for our students to see locally that there are a lot of jobs that are into commercial construction also. The second course or book that we would utilize really focuses more on that residential construction piece because we can pair that with the tiny house project that we do with Habitat for Humanity and other projects that we pair with them. That's typically more of a residential construction course. And so these booklets will provide everything from example projects to safety training pieces to skills and knowledge that those kids have to have, and then access to those certification pieces at that point in time. This is the budget for the two booklets. So we would purchase 35 of the student manuals. So basically a class set for our students to use. We don't need to, when it says manual, it's not like the workbook where you fill it out and you don't reuse it. It is a reusable book. Approximate dollars, just short of $1,700. We would utilize our CTE curriculum budget and or some of our CTE incentive funding for this. Because our students can earn certifications, we'll be able to use a portion of that money we get from the state of Wisconsin to cover this purchase. So we would be looking at that after the approval of this as it would go through the full board. Our next steps, I have the summary of the proposed change there, but then we would look at discussing this next Monday, and I have a date wrong, it should actually be September 9th. We're going into the start of the school year for final action as we go into the school year. The only thing that would take effect this school year would be the new resource for construction. Everything else would go into the course planning guide, and that process starts for our students late December, early into January and February. So any questions I can answer for you this evening?
I don't have any questions, but I think that this sounds really good. I love all the CTE classes that we offer here, and I wish they had stuff like this when I was in high school, but I feel like they didn't. But I think it's great that we can offer all of this, and I think it looks good.
Thank you very much. And I will see you on Monday with the same thing again.
All right,
Thank you.
awesome, thank you. I would look forward to hearing it again. All right, let's see here. Okay, it looks like we have come to the end of our planned agenda here. I make a motion to close the meeting. Is that a second? All right, thanks,